Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamuna Tiravana Chadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayom Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Hari Vijagacharya Astatara Satasi Srimati's Divine Grace is Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shira Prabhupada Ki Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We've been reading for several weeks, few weeks, Canto 10, Chapter 14, which is Brahma's prayers. which in the sequence of the Bhagavatam, it comes after the Brahma Vimohan Lila, Brahma becoming bewildered after testing his mystic powers against Krishna's mystic powers, and guess who won? It wasn't Brahma. So when he saw the mystic display that Krishna showed, or the fact that the power of Krishna is unlimited, not just greater, but unlimited, he offered prayers. Chapter 14 is his prayers. And we got as far as text 14. And just a little background, how these prayers are unfolding. He's acknowledging his wrongdoing. He's specific about what his wrongdoing was. The audacity, the foolishness of testing his powers against Krishna's powers is offensive. And the further offense or crime of kidnapping. He stole, with mystic power, he stole the calves and cowherd boys, put them in a cave and so forth. So that was what he was apologizing for. Then he says, I'm ready to accept whatever it is. If you wish to pardon me, if you wish to punish me, whatever it is, I will not budge an inch from a fraction of an inch from serving your lotus feet, because I'm dedicated to you and service to you. And then he kind of backpedals and he starts speaking about reasons why Krishna should forgive him and not punish him. And that's the section that we've been reading recently. He indirectly, almost directly, but indirectly, he is identifying Krishna as the source of everything, including Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Kshirodakshay Vishnu. So those three Vishnu forms, they're, as far as Krishna Tattva is concerned, truths about Krishna are concerned, they're in a special category. They're not exactly expansions, technically, but it's called Kala, which means, at least Bhakti Siddhanta translates it as a portion of a plenary portion. What's a portion of a plenary portion? That's Vishnu. Vishnu doesn't exhibit all of what is within Krishna, but a portion of what is within Krishna. And that portion that Vishnu function exhibits is control of Prakriti. Like we have a nice verse in Bhagavad Gita, Maya Dhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. Krishna says, I Adhyaksha, I oversee, I'm in charge of Prakriti. By my supervision, the moving, chala and achala, moving and non-moving living entities, are all under my control. But that's a Paramatma function, or a Vishnu function. And that Vishnu function is a subset of the totality of what Krishna is and does. So Brahma is speaking in his prayers to Krishna, saying, you're Mahavishnu. I mean, he doesn't use the word Mahavishnu, but you are that supreme who, in comparison to me, I'm insignificant. I'm within one of these little universes. He calls it a pot-like universe. Pot-like means it's got a shell, like a pot has a shell. but also meaning is temporary. Pots are temporary. They break and then they're finished. So I'm within one of these pot-like universes, and by your power, I built what goes inside the universe. But from you, from the pores of your skin, when you exhale, unlimited numbers of universes in the form of golden seeds come streaming out of your body. When you exhale and when you inhale, they come back within your body. So what am I in relation to you? The inference is, you who have unlimited potencies, one of which is mercy. Little mercy, please. You who are unlimited in your potencies, including mercy, little mercy over this way. Please forgive me. That's Mahavishnu. And then Garbhodakshai Vishnu, he, in his prayers, likens Garbhodakshai Vishnu to a mother who, within the womb of the mother, there may be a child, and when the child starts kicking within the womb of the mother doesn't take offense and want to punish that little child within her womb. So similarly, I came from your abdomen. I came from a lotus flower that came from your abdomen before the lotus flower was within your abdomen. And so I'm like your little child, and so you're like my parent. And I've done something naughty, so please forgive me. I'm very repentant. That's Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and Shirodakshai Vishnu. Shirodakshai Vishnu was Paramatma. And as you probably know, Paramatma not only is within the heart of every living being, and Paramatma is not only within every atom of existence, of material creation. Paramatma also has his planet in Sweta Dweepa, the White Island, where there's an ocean of milk. Shiro Dakshayi, Vishnu's ocean of milk. That's the place where the demigods go when they have a problem and they want to get Vishnu's help. They go to the milk ocean and offer Purusha Sukta prayers to Lord Vishnu. Help, we need your help. There's problem we can't deal with and we need your help. Because they're just servants of Vishnu. They know that. And when they need help, they know where to go. They need protection. They need something. They go to Shirodakshay Vishnu. So he's being described in this previous verse. He's being described in his previous verse as the Lord of the universe, because Shirodakshay Vishnu, at the Swetadweep island, White Island, the planet of Shirodakshay Vishnu, is within the universe. When this universe is destroyed, that planet remains because it's not a material planet. It's a spiritual planet within the material universe. So those three Vishnus are described, and then comes this 14, where Brahma is speaking of Krishna as the original Narayan. So we know Narayan as the Lord of Vaikuntha, Lakshmi Narayan, the Lord of Vaikuntha. And for each of the unlimited Vaikuntha planets, there's a Lord, Narayan, with symbols of Vishnu in different hands, so he has different names. He's known by this name, that name. According to our Vaishnava scriptures, it's Lord Narayan. May be called by this name, that name, but it's Lord Narayan. That's the category or tattva. And Brahma is then saying, you're the original Narayan. From Narayan, you expand, or from you, Narayan expands. There we go. Narayan is an expansion of you. You're the original Narayan. And he goes through different explanations of how that is so. It's like proof or logical conclusions that are establishing a spiritual truth. So we've been discussing that verse last couple of classes, and a question came up, which is what I wanted to discuss today. A question came up. We know that Garbhodakshai Vishnu, the Vishnu that's with lives in the Garbhodak ocean within each universe, and the 14 planetary systems are above that, the Garbhodak ocean. So the feet of the universal form is just above the Garbhodak ocean. So when we hear descriptions of Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, there's goddess Lakshmi at his lotus feet. And we see, the paintings. There's Lakshmi, there's Garbhodakshay Vishnu, there's the lotus that grows from the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Brahma appears on top. We're quite familiar with that depiction. So then the question came, what about the expansion of Garbhodakshay Vishnu within the heart of every living entity, or within every atom? Is the goddess of fortune Lakshmi there too? We don't hear so much about her. We hear about Paramatma. We don't hear about the consort of Paramatma. So is the consort of Paramatma with Paramatma, or what? That question came up. That's our discussion for today. I couldn't recall, but I located the text that was sent out in May of 2018, and I'm going to read it because it explains. It's a kind of summary of all of what I just kind of went over quickly. The Vishnu forms. This is understanding Krishna Tattva, the truths about Krishna, because in order to return to the spiritual world, or a very celebrated verse, I'm sure you've all heard it many, many times, because at least we hear it every Krishna Janmashtami. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha jaktva deham punar janma naiti mameti sorjuna. Very familiar verse, chapter 4, Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam, the divyam, or transcendental nature of his birth and appearance, one who knows, evam yo veti tattvataha, one who knows in truth those two things, the truths of Krishna's appearance and activities, punar janma na, the cycle of birth and death is over, broken. And mameti, one comes to me. So that's what we're doing. We're discussing truths about Krishna so we can prepare ourselves to go back to Godhead. Just by having clarity of who is this Lord Krishna that we're worshiping. Now, the scene of Brahma making his prayers is in Vrindavan, and paintings of Krishna are commonly in Vrindavan. There he is with Krishna with his flute by the side of Radharani. And, we all know Krishna in Vrindavan, but Krishna in Vrindavan includes everything, including all these other expansions and portions of a plenary portion, or Vishnu forms. So here's what the scripture says about Paramatma and the presence of Lakshmi with Paramatma. I hope you find it interesting. I do. Here we go. Lakshmi is never separated from Narayana. Lakshmi Devi is also present with Paramatma. However, with the Paramatma feature, Lakshmi does not manifest any functions. Her relationship with him is internal at that time. internal. Similarly, Rama Devi is situated within Mahavishnu. When you see pictures of Mahavishnu, he's reclining on an Antashesh, and you don't see Lakshmi. Why? It's the scriptures described. Rama Devi is the name by which she is known, and Rama Devi is within, and he's in Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is a mystic slumber. Nidra means sleep, and Yoga Nidra is not what we do. It's what Vishnu does. It's mystic slumber. He's enjoying pastimes with Rama Devi within, because she's his internal potency, so she can be within or it can be out. She's a person, she's a Shakti, but she's a person with Shakti, his Shakti. So Rama Devi is within, and Lakshmi is also within Paramatma. In Brahma Vaivarta Purana, gives the verse numbers, all three Purusha avatars are mentioned, along with their Lakshmis, as Mahavirat or Mahavishnu, Kshudra Virat, Ksudra, Kshudra Virat, or Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and one who resides in the pore of Kshudra Virat or Shirodakshay Vishnu. Here's the translation from Brahma Vaivarta Purana. Quote, O saintly one, when from a pore of Garbhodakshay Vishnu I expand as Lord Shirodakshay Vishnu, you expand to become beautiful goddess Lakshmi, my consort. Translation. One should also understand how Krishna expands himself as Paramatma in every living entity and even within atoms. I'm going to quote something from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Charitamrita is a biography about Lord Chaitanya's life, and in the early section, the Adi Leela section, there's describing Krishna Tattva. So I'm reading directly from that. Krishna is the original personality Godhead. His expansion is Balaram. Lord Balaram expands himself into the original Chaturvyuha forms or quadruple expansions, namely Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. From the original Chaturvyuha above, the second Chaturvyuha expands. That is, in Krishna Loka, there's the four. Vasudeva, Krishna. Sankarshan, Balaram. Pradyumna, the first son of Krishna and Rukmini. And Aniruddha, Pradyumna's first son. They're there in Krishna Loka, in Dwarka specifically. And then from that original Chaturvyuha, second Chaturvyuha, expand in the Vaikuntha realm. So there's Narayana in Vaikuntha, and there's also these four, known by these four names. In the second Chaturvyuha, the form of Sankarshan is also known as Maha Sankarshan. It is from Maha Sankarshan that Mahavishnu, or Karnana Dakshayi Vishnu, the first of the Vishnu forms, becomes manifested. So we were discussing this. Sankarshan in the Vaikuntha realm expands as the Mahavishnu. And then it's described a little bit differently. In this spiritual world, Aniruddha expands and Pradyumna expands from the Vaikuntha realm, and these form then Garbhodakshay Vishnu and Shirodakshay Vishnu. That's what we heard. Remember? Here's a similar but slightly differently worded explanation. Mahavishnu lies on the causal ocean, which appears in one corner of the spiritual world. He manifests the Mahatattva, or the sum total of material energy. It is into this Mahatattva that he exhales all the seeds, all the seed-like universes through the pores of his skin. These seed-like universes then expand as the different material elements form coverings around them, or they Bhakti Siddhanta's language is they conglomerate, they cling. The elements cling to the seeds of the universe. So the male gives the seed, and the Mahatattva, the Prakriti, material nature, provides the body of the universe. And so the universes start to expand. They get bigger and bigger. That's Mahavishnu. Each of the coverings is 10 times thicker than the previous covering and form a shell-like covering. When Mahavishnu impregnates the living entities by his glance into material nature, it begins to manifest its various energies. Material nature has energies, but those energies are dormant unless activated, just like a machine. There's some cars out there in the driveway. It's a machine. And the machines, can do stuff. But the machine doesn't do stuff unless you activate it, or your cell phone. It can do stuff, but it doesn't do stuff unless you activate it. I mean, you need the battery charge, but you also have to press the right buttons, and then it's activated. There's the touch of spirit that brings about activity through machines. Material nature, Prakriti, doesn't do things on its own. It requires the touch of spirit. Creation comes as a result. Life comes from life. In other words, not life comes from matter. Right? Life comes from life, not life comes from matter. Now, modern scientists might say something else, but the Bhagavatam in the Vedic conception is life comes from life, not life comes from matter. Big difference. Big difference. When the universes have thus developed in the womb of material nature, Mahavishnu expands as Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who enters as Karnadakshay Vishnu into each universe with the living entities of that particular universe, and thus activates each universe by his presence. He lies down on Anantashesha, who lies on the Garbhodak ocean, which is the perspiration from the Lord's body and half fills the universe. From his navel comes a lotus bud, which is the totality form of the living entity's fruitive activity. Govinda Mohini, you heard that one? You were asking this question, right? Was it you that was asking the question? Someone else. The lotus bud and the stem and the flower is the total form of the living entity's fruitive activity. It is their karma, or it's their karma is powering the development of that lotus. And then whoop, there's the lotus flower on top. The lotus grows, dissipating the darkness of the universe. On the top of the lotus, Lord Brahma, with 4 heads, the first living being, appears. So now we have 2 Vishnus, Mahavishnu and Garbhodakshay Vishnu, with Brahma. Now comes the 3rd Vishnu. That's this Paramatma form. Next is the 3rd expansion of Lord Vishnu, called Shiro Dakshay Vishnu, who is the incarnation of the quality of goodness and who maintains the universe, who is the all-pervading supersoul, Paramatma. He is the universal form of the Lord. Interesting. and expands himself as the supersoul within every living entity. He is known as Shiro Vishnu because he lies on the ocean of milk, or Kshira, on the island of Svetadweep, White Island. These are the three expansions of Vishnu who oversee and make the creation of the material world possible. So what I just read is from Chaitanya Charitamrita. If you want to look it up later, it's Madhya Lila, chapter 20, verses 292 through 295. And that's describing quickly the process of creation, but going back to Brahma's prayers, when we see, so there's this nice painting of Radha and Krishna up there. And when we look at the painting of Radha and Krishna up there, or anywhere, we might see a painting of Radha Krishna. There's Srinathji over here. So when we see paintings or images or deities of Krishna, we're not seeing what Brahma saw. Brahma saw a little 5-year-old boy he just not even finished with his lunch. So he was holding in his left hand some rice with a yogurt with rice in it. That was part of his lunch. And he's smiling, looking at Brahma with unblinking eyes just after he showed this fantastic display of, better than fireworks. It was really spectacular. When we see Krishna, or when we think of Krishna, we should understand, at least in principle, he's the source of everything. He's not just playing a flute and enjoying with Radharani and the Gopas and the Gopis and herding calves, and he's doing all those things. But he's everything, or within him is everything, including all the universes. When Mother Yasoda, the celebrated pastime, Krishna was accused of eating dirt. He was just 3 years old. Maybe between 3 and 4 years old. Balaram and the other boys accused him. He's eating dirt. So Mother Yasoda, why are you eating dirt? You have so much. We have so many nice things. Why are you eating dirt? I didn't eat dirt. They're lying. And Mother Yasoda said, why would they lie? They're your friends. They're not enemies. And there's your elder brother, Balaram. He's not going to lie. He said, if you don't believe me, you can look inside my mouth. I didn't eat dirt. And you know what happened? She looked inside, and she saw the whole universe. Now, what's it like to see the whole universe? I mean, we can look in the sky and see the stars in the sky. But how do you see the whole universe? And he was in her lap. I really like this part. He was in her lap, and it means she was holding the universe in her lap. How do you do that? That you can't do. You can't hold the universe. And not only in her lap, but all around her also, simultaneously. So literally within Krishna is everything. And when the display that was there for Brahma, he not only saw identical forms of all the cowherd boys and calves, but at the same time, each calf and each cowherd boy showed forms of Narayan. Simultaneously, so many Narayans. And each of the Narayans showing the unlimited potencies of Narayan by names, and personified this potency, that potency. So many potencies are named. Many, many, many. And, that's just a limited list. The potencies are unlimited. And then, simultaneously, he showed many universes. How do you see many universes? How do you see it? But he showed it. He showed it, and he gave Brahma the eyes to see it. Too bad he didn't take a photograph. Probably didn't have his cell phone ready to take a photograph. Look at that. But he described it, or at least Shukadeva Goswami described what he saw. And that is to say, all of that is within Krishna, because in a flash, just as quickly as Krishna displayed all that, Krishna withdrew all that. And now it's within Krishna. So to meditate on Krishna, or to see the beautiful form of Krishna, like in this nice painting, within Krishna is everything. There's the pastime with Radha that he's enjoying in this painting, and there's no limit to what's within Krishna and his limit to his enjoyment. That's something that Brahma says in his prayers also. I'm the most intelligent person in this universe, it is said. I received the knowledge of the Vedas directly from you, but I can't understand this form. What to speak of the happiness that you're experiencing within this form? I have no way of measuring or fathoming your happiness. So it's breathtaking and astonishing. At the same time, he has a medium size. That language is used. Martyalingam is the Sanskrit. He has a human form, or medium size. But he's unlimited. So he's simultaneously unlimited and all-pervasive and limited and of medium size, all at the same time. So the showing of this form, like in this painting of enjoying with Radha and Krishna, that's for his pleasure. And his pleasure is enjoying with his loving associates. And his pleasure is also attracting the hearts and minds of us who are in this covered condition, forgetful. And the Bhagavatam helps us become, have amnesia wear off, and we can start to remember who Krishna is. And so hearing about Krishna helps stimulate our remembrance of who Krishna is. And then when we hear these attractive pastimes in Vrindavan, it becomes even more spectacular. Because his pastimes in Vrindavan, as just already mentioned, it's just his appearance is to stimulate or nourish the natural love that the residents of Vrindavan have for him. He does things, he says things, he glances, he plays his flute, he smiles, he does what he does, or steals butter. He does everything that he does to nourish and stimulate their love. And for us also, just hearing about them, the same potency is there to attract our hearts to that loving personality. And all of his pastimes, even outside of Vrindavan, are for the same purpose. But the pastimes in Vrindavan have a very, very, very special intimacy that are not easy to understand. It's easy to listen to his pastimes, but to understand his pastimes, it's more difficult than understanding all this technical stuff about the different Vishnus and Narayana and all these expansions, and that's kind of, information challenging. But you work at anything, information challenging something, and you spend time with it, and you can learn it. But that's not what Bhakti is, not just learning information. It's becoming attracted to the all-attractive Supreme Person. And that's the fruit of hearing Brahma's prayers. becoming attracted to the all-attractive Supreme Person and understanding more about his attractiveness and his opulence, which is always attractive. We hear, I'll end with this, we hear again and again in the early portion of Krishna's pastimes in Braja, up until 12 when he left to go to Mathura, Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan have a very special feature of sweetness, and the sweetness is there because of the intensity of and confidential nature of the love of the resident in Vrindavan. So he does things in Vrindavan that he just doesn't do outside of Vrindavan. There's a sweetness about his pastimes in Vrindavan. And he places himself completely at the control of the residents of Vrindavan. And he likes it. And they don't feel that, we're controlling him. They don't perceive his opulences when he shows it. They see something else. How wonderful is Krishna? That's about it. There's a whole chapter, Wonderful Krishna. The Wonderful Krishna chapter comes right after his lifting of Govardhan Hill. And after that 7 days is over and the water subsides and everything's back to normal, the elders get together and say, who is this boy anyways? 7 years old, but who lifts a hill at any age? And then they start, but not only that, he did this, and then he did that, and then this, then he did that. Who is this boy? We're just amazed. Wonderful Krishna. They decide to go ask Nanda, who is your son? They have highest regard for Nanda, appropriately so. And he then explains what they already knew, which was the words spoken by Gargamuni during the name-giving ceremony of Krishna that discloses who he was through his name. But as far as Nanda is concerned, he's his son, and all of them, they feel the same. He's our son. Although Nanda's the father, we all have that parental affection towards him. He's our son, collectively. And Gargamuni said, this boy is going to have powers like Narayan. And with those powers, he'll protect the residents of Vrindavan. So take good care of him. This is when he's like 40 days old, little baby. Think of it's a little child that's 40 days old. Pretty tiny. So his childhood pastimes, he grew doing amazing things, and they would remember from time to time what Gargamuni said. He'd have powers like Narayan. He didn't say it was Narayan. Didn't say it wasn't either. So that's how they see when he would do something amazing. Oh, Nanda Maharaj, your pious activities are so powerful. By your pious activities, Krishna was protected. And things like that they would see. When the little boys were asked, how did these two trees get pulled over? They said exactly what happened and nobody could believe it. Oh, children's talk. Let's sanctify and protect his body with Vedic mantras and bathing him in Jamuna water and cow dung and cow urine and sanctify him so he'll be protected from whatever it is. That's how they would process his power, his opulence. From time to time he would exhibit it, but their love was so strong they couldn't see otherwise, and Krishna was covering them with his yoga maya so they couldn't see it because they didn't want to see it. They just wanted to be in their glory was that they didn't know. And we're trying to know. Because we're enjoying to know. We know Krishna Tattva, so we can go back to Godhead. And if we become so qualified to really know, Krishna may choose to cover our knowing. And we can become Brijbasi-like and just love Krishna. But until then, we're encouraged, because it's within the pages of the Bhagavatam, to try to understand Krishna Tattva like this, along with his wonderful pastime with Brahma. So let's see if there's some discussion. And we're quite used to when there's discussion that's not on topic is quite okay. But on topic is nice too. Anyone here would like to discuss some points?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, all this technical information is quite mind-boggling.
But you've heard it now 6 times, so you probably
But
get
but it still seems really
too much?
yes.
Really?
Yeah.
After hearing it so
I'm a
many times, I
slow-
would think, does it start to come into focus a little bit?
Yes, little bit. And this point about this Paramatma having his own island.
Sweta Dweep means island, right?
Yeah.
And Sweta means white. So the abode of Kshirodakshay Vishnu in this universe is known as Sweta Dweep.
So that is in this.
It's in this universe.
Okay.
It's the same as Dhruva Loka,
Okay.
or the pole star. Those are three pole star you've heard of.
Yes.
Okay. And Dhruva Loka you've heard of. They're the same. Pole star, Dhruva Loka, same. And there's another name for the same. That's Sweta Dweep. When the demigods, I mentioned, when the demigods have a problem, they go. That's where they go. The shore of the Milk Ocean. Help. Right?
Yes.
That it's in this universe. That the location of it is at the uppermost region of the heavenly realm. The heavenly realm is called Swarga. And the uppermost portion of Swarga is where Sweta Dweep, Dhruva Loka, Pole Star, that's where it is. In the structure, the vertical structure of the universe. Bhuloka, Bhuvar Loka, Swarga Loka, everybody knows that one. And at the topmost region of Swarga, that's where the pole star is, or Sweta Dweep. That's where Lord Vishnu resides, in addition to being in the heart.
Thank you for that clarification, Maharaj. And I have one little off-topic question. We are doing this Bhagavad Gita discussion with Kathamrita Mataji on Friday evening. She's doing it for a Gujarati community. And in that, there is this discussion about our psychophysical nature, the modes of nature. Quite a bit of discussion is going on that topic. So my question is, this nature is, the psychophysical nature is something that we...
It's a covering. It's not who we are.
Okay. It's not who we are, but it's so strong. Can it be changed?
Yeah, absolutely. It's meant to be changed. It does change all the time, in fact. Is material nature static or moving? It's dynamic. As long as the soul is there, as long as life is there, it's like a kaleidoscope. It keeps moving. Just slightly, slowly, not, rapidly. It's possible supposing somebody, whatever, somebody has a nature that something, supposing they have an addiction. Can that change? Yeah. It may take a while, but it can change. And it can become something else. So Prabhupada's phrase is, when you practice at something, it becomes second nature. You've heard that phrase before?
Yes.
Practice, 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 practice. Second nature. It becomes habit. It becomes your second nature. The psychophysical nature certainly can change. And the process of bhakti is meant to elevate psychophysical nature to a higher plane of mode of nature. It doesn't eliminate necessarily, but it elevates necessarily. Guaranteed, because it's pure. It elevates that which is lower to something higher. Psychophysical nature can change. It's a covering.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Here, in practical terms, the practical terms is, if one thing can be accomplished, that is, if Krishna Eka Shanana, if that one thing can be accomplished, shelter in Krishna can be accomplished, all the other things follow it. All the other desirable things follow it. Good quality, good character follows that one. Supposing somebody's psychophysical nature is they're a thief, that can change. Supposing, whatever, they smoke cigarettes because, it's psychophysical nature. They've got it, something habit. Then it can change. And the driving force is not just change from this behavior to stop smoking. It's a change that's on the spiritual plane, so it supports the physical change. Good character follows a devotee. Do it the other way. Supposing someone is pious, it doesn't mean you stack up piety upon piety and upon piety and upon piety, and then you get to bhakti. It doesn't work that way. Piety doesn't create bhakti. The absence of piety doesn't stop bhakti. Bhakti is independent. And when bhakti rises, character rises, psychophysical nature rises. The modes become lighter and brighter and more towards goodness. Psychophysical nature changes. There may be some fundamental, like, your son likes playing mridanga, so it's not like he's going to stop liking to play mridanga or something. He'll probably continue for the rest of his life, that, having to do with his psychophysical nature. But using that in Krishna's service, then it just becomes spiritualized, that psychophysical nature. It gets elevated.
Yeah, it's just these modes seem so like gripping and tightening to keep pulling us down. And, that's why sometimes I get confused that can it really...
Well, on the one hand, we engage according to our psychophysical nature because that's natural. And by engaging propensities according to psychophysical nature in Krishna service, they also become elevated. Those propensities become elevated. So instead of being interested in bebop music, your son is interested in mridanga playing. He has a cycle, percussion tendency, but instead of, joining a rock band, he likes practicing mridanga and joining kirtan. It elevates. Anyone else in the room? And if there's nobody eager, we'll go to online questions.
This question is from Balaram Prasad Prabhu. Which expansion of Krishna do the Sri Sampradaya refer to as Narayana? And Om Namo Narayana.
The Lord of Vaikuntha, that one.
This is from Rasakrida Prabhu. When Hiranyaksha took Mother Earth under the ocean, where did he take her? I think under which ocean?
Well, he's saying under the ocean, rather the earth fell into the Garbhodak ocean. And those that study, pardon me, you're going to get bewildered by this detail. Those that study Vedic cosmology, they say sometimes we see paintings that show the earth as a globe, and Lord Varaha lifts earth as a globe on Varaha's tusks. There are other very old paintings that show earth as Bhumandala, as a disk. It's a detail, but Bhumandala is a Vedic conception of Earth as in the middle planetary region, and that it doesn't toss to the side Bhugola, or Earth as a sphere, but the main emphasis in Vedic cosmology is Earth as a plane or as a disk. So where he placed Earth was back in its position in the in Vedic cosmology, in the where it belongs, in the position above the lower 7 planetary systems. He put it back where it belongs. Bhuvar Swarga Loka. That's what he did. So the Bhumandala went back to that position where the Earth is situated in Vedic cosmology, or the structure of the universe.
This question is from Sri Radhika Mataji. I am attempting to tread a dangerous territory here carefully.
Say it again.
I am attempting to tread a dangerous territory here carefully, for I hold our original preceptor in the highest regard. I am struggling with what I am perceiving to be entitlement mentality in Lord Brahma's prayers. He lists reasons why Lord Krishna should forgive him. I know that when my own or others' apologies are tinged with an attitude of being entitled to be forgiven, it's very repelling to the person on the receiving end of the apology. I also struggle with the same negative perception when I read the prayer in Ishopanishad, where the devotee asks the Lord at his last moment to remember all that he has done for him, in effect entitling him to the Lord's mercy. May I request you to please help me process these feelings?
I don't pick up an entitlement mood. And if you do, I don't know where it's coming from because I don't see it within. This, rather than entitlement, here's what I hear or see or understand. He's just done something unwholesome or naughty or disturbing. He'd made an offense. He's acknowledged the offense, and as I stated earlier, you're free to punish me or reward me or forgive me as you wish. Then he's saying, my preference, the mood shifts, please forgive me. And these are my thoughts or reasons why it would be very appropriate for you. He hasn't changed the position. You can punish me if you wish, or you can forgive me if you wish. Here's reasons why forgiveness would be very appropriate. I mean, essentially, you're this most powerful personality. Part of your powerfulness is your mercy. Please show me your mercy. He's not trembling and cowering, nor is he on the other end feeling entitled. He's appealing with reason. Let's put it this way. If he was coming forward with that kind of an attitude, he would get reprimanded like Indra did. And with Brahma, there's no reprimand. He did a course correction. He fulfilled his desire to what's the extent of his potencies, and he got the answer. There's no limit. And Krishna likes to reciprocate with his devotees, including Brahma, so he did. Krishna wants to educate us, the conditioned souls, about his glories. So he's doing so through Brahma rather than tooting his own horn. Brahma's just expressing glories. This is what I see what's going on, not entitlement. He's just having Brahma express his glories for us and for his own purification. But it's not an entitlement prayer. And similarly, I don't feel in the Ishopanishad that verse, please remember all the deeds I've done on your behalf. To me, it seems unnecessary because the all-knowing Supreme Lord certainly knows one's deeds. So it seems redundant. On the other hand, prayer of any kind could be considered to be redundant. The all-knowing Supreme Lord already knows. So why bother praying? Because he's already knowing. He's omniscient. Rather, it's opening one's heart. Prayer is opening one's heart, and the opening of one's heart is not exactly entitlement, but I'm dedicated to you. It's what we heard in commentary is Krishna smiling at Brahma is thinking, yes, he has some pride, but he's very dedicated and devoted to me. Let me give him my mercy. So I don't see it as prayer of entitlement, but maybe you do. I mean, not maybe you do, so I don't.
This question is from Snehavalli Mataji. I'm restating my yesterday's question. Little clarification will be helpful. My question is, how is Loka Sakshi's function different from Shiro the Kasai Vishnu? Because both are called as Paramatma, Shiro the Kasai Vishnu is already overseeing every living being's activities.
There is something of an overlap. We just read it. I read it from Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I don't know if others noticed it, but I noticed it. So rather than repeating what I read, I'll see if I can address your question. And your question is, I would say there is some overlap in one sense. There is some overlap in one sense, but the distinction is that Loka Sakshi for the Loka Sakshi for the whole universe Loka Sakshi for the whole universe is hang on, Snehavalli, we'll get to your question. Just a little logistic change here in the room. Shiro Vishnu is noting everything down to the atomic scale, and you add all the atoms together because Shiro Vishnu is present within every atom, and you get the Loka Sakshi for the whole universe. Now, Garbhodakshay Vishnu is Loka Sakshi for the whole universe. So that the totality is just, how to say this properly. The scale is different, the function is the same. In one sense, let's do this. In the room here, we now have 4, 6, 8, 9 of us. There's 9 of us in the room, and there's not 9 super souls, there's 1 super soul. Equally situated within 9 human forms, maybe other living entities crawling around here and there, insects or something. But at least in the human form, there's 9 of us. But there's 1 Paramatma. And within the universe, there's 1 Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And beyond this universe, there's 1 Mahavishnu. But that Mahavishnu and Garbhodakshay Vishnu and Kshirodakshay Vishnu are all 1 Vishnu. Differently situated and differently named because of slightly different functions. So the slight difference of function is the scale. Kshirodakshay Vishnu conscious of the atomic level. Garbhodakshay Vishnu conscious of the universal level. And Mahavishnu conscious of all levels, of all universes. It's not exactly like information is being sent to a central switchboard. And Mahavishnu is the central switchboard that's taking all the data or information. It's not like that. It's consciousness with different functions on different scales. That's the best I think I can do, Snehavalli. Loka Sakshi.
This question is from Mahati Kirti Mataji. We have very clear explanation about expansions of Lord Krishna in our scripture. But do we have explanation about Srimati Radharani's expansions? Is Goddess Lakshmi expansion of Srimati Radharani?
Yes. We hear less about Radharani's expansions, but that's a little more esoteric and therefore less commonly discussed. But the answer to your question is yes. In fact, all of the gopis, and how many gopis are, gigabytes and gigabytes of gopis, they're all expansions of Radha.
This question is from Kirti Prabhu. Who is Narayana? How does he appear from Krishna?
Well, Narayana is the Lord of Vaikuntha, and please don't make the mistake of thinking that once upon a time there wasn't Vaikuntha, and then the origin of everything, Krishna looked at his watch and said, guess what, it's time for Vaikuntha to appear, and poof. That rather, Vaikuntha is eternal, Narayana is eternal. It's more speaking of an ontological relationship than a chronological one. Narayana is his expansion, but not chronologically, just ontologically. You got that one? Okay.
This question is from Shamala Mataji. As we know, the Milky Way galaxy is there in our solar system. Is this the same as Shvetadweep?
No, it's not the same as Shvetadweep. I don't know, let me be very clear. I don't know anything about Milky Way or galaxies, the whole notion of galaxies. I don't understand it, so don't ask me about it because I don't understand it ahead of time. But Shvetadweep is the pole star. You can look in the sky, or astronomer can help you look in the sky and see where it is. And you can see it. It's not a galaxy, it's a star in the sky.
There are two questions from Taruni Radha Mataji. The first question is, apart from learning about Krishna Tattva, does hearing about Brahma's prayers also quell a conditioned soul's illusion?
Sure, because he's disclosing Krishna Tattva and his devotion for Krishna as well.
Second question, as the pole star does not get destroyed during partial or complete annihilation,
correct,
where does it go when Mahavishnu inhales?
It doesn't go anywhere. That's where it goes. Anything? Okay. How about you? Nothing. Maybe we didn't pick the right topic. I tried to make things move along according to the flow of what we were discussing, but maybe it's too intricate. Just conclude with this then. I've said this in several classes in a row. I find it awesome that the Vedic literature gives us such clear, definitive detail about God. When I was a little boy, once upon a time I was a little boy, and I used to ask questions about God and the kingdom of God. And there was no answers. So, and it was humiliating, the response that came, so I stopped asking outside. But so all religions, theistic, there's atheism, but any theism teaches there's God. But what do you know about God? Or it teaches love of God. But how can you love someone if you don't know that someone? What are they like? What do they do? When you go there, what do you do? And those are the kind of questions I used to ask. Like, what's the travel advertisement? What's the marketing for, the kingdom of God, this nice place? No answer. So there's abundance of understanding within the Vedas. So much so that ask Govinda Mohini, she's like, wow, it's bewildering to me. Too much. But it's just Krishna Tattva. And it's just fine if you don't understand it all. It's purifying anyways. Because the sound vibration is of the personality of Godhead. Just like people may not know what the Hare Krishna mantra means. But by hearing the Hare Krishna mantra, there's purification. Because within the name, there's potencies that purify. Or, within Vedic culture in general, hearing the stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata, which was part of the culture. People may not understand. That's okay. It's purifying. It helps to elevate consciousness and build character. That's in the absence of it, you have other stuff. That's tamasic. People want stories, so they get other stories. The other stories are tamasic. And your culture is lost, and people are running around, killing each other, or doing, very bizarre things. That there's no culture. So it's quite okay if you don't understand, though. You don't have to be a big intellect, to go back to Godhead. That's not the prerequisite. Or you have a big, data bank of things you understand, and you can say it back, and so you get to go back to Godhead. That's not the criterion. It's the purification and the hearing the glories, name, fame, qualities, pastimes, relationships, the truths about Krishna. And again, just hearing and hearing and hearing, it becomes not just I accept it, but I start to understand it better, and therefore accept it. Because the culture today is different. We want to know why about everything. We're trained in our education process to ask why. Not only what, but why. I met a Chinese lady some years ago at Rath Yatra. Somebody introduced, because they know I go to China. So she just had one question. I just have one question. Why creation? It's a good question. So there's answers to these things, but many people aren't asking the question. Just hearing, when the spirit is inquisitive, I want to understand about our Lord Krishna. So there's truths about our Lord Krishna that the Vedic literature has that's compelling. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. First verse of the Chatur Sloki verses of Bhagavad Gita says, by understanding that everything comes from Krishna, He's the source of everything, one becomes His devotee. Because I'm part of that everything, and I'm meant for His service. It follows naturally. So, if they're, to repeat something we've been speaking about, if this is a little too much, know that for sure, at least, it's purifying. It's coming directly from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is itself pure, supremely pure. And the details I may or may not understand, that's okay. I'm becoming purified just by hearing the sound vibration. And slowly, slowly through purification, I'll start to understand. Not in an intellectual way, but in a spiritual way. Krishna is the source of everything. Let me take shelter of him. Engage in his service. You have something? One question popped up. 2. 3.
This is from Kirti Prabhu. It appears that along with unlimited Vishnus, Brahma also saw many Shivas.
Many?
Lord Shivas.
Yeah, sure, why not?
So, my Prabhu's question is, are Shivas also expansions of one Shiva?
As far as I understand, the answer would be yes, because Shiva is a tattva, Shiva tattva. So why only one? Next.
This question is from Sarala Mataji. What are main intentions of Krishna's expansions?
What are the main intentions?
Yeah. And which expansion is mostly remembered or touched people's heart?
Well, expansions are just, they have the different expansions are for different functions. Some are for Leela expansions, pastimes. Some are for overseeing the modes of nature, guna avatars. Some are for overseeing the laws of mankind, manvantar avatars. Those are expansions. So there's different, the expansions are differentiated according to function, and even within function, then there's different functions, sub-functions. And using the word function, it's just like everyone is, the expansions have a relationship with the source from which they're expanded of service. And they're just carrying out one of the Lord's functions, or so he, he's making himself accessible through his expansions for the benefit of his devotees and the benefit of those who have forgotten him, like people like us. Does that answer the question?
Second part of the question was, which expansion is mostly remembered or touched people's hearts?
Well, I think you have to ask the people. Some people like Ram, some people like Krishna, some people like Nrsimha. I know one devotee, has another. Popular in Gujarat is Dattatreya. Some, that's their Ishtadev. So, whatever touches their heart. So, yeah, I don't know if you take a survey and how many people like Dattatreya, please raise your hand. People. So anyway, it's personalized.
Another question from Sarala Mataji. As Krishna's follower, how can we identify any other expansion of Krishna in this Kali Yuga?
Well, the main expansion of Krishna in this Kali Yuga is his name. Nama avatar. Nama rupe.
One more question came up from Amara Mataji. Knowing how great God is may not churn the feelings of love for him.
That's right.
But it is the personal reciprocity and personal interaction that one may start loving and liking God. These unfathomable potencies of Krishna makes me feel certainly he is great. How can the sadhakas get to that understanding of personal interactions with
by service? Krishna? Understanding his greatness inspires service. And when you do service, and you do more service and more service, then a kind of intimacy grows from that service relationship. It's natural. You start with hearing his glories. He's great. Let me serve him. And from more and more service comes intimacy. And then you're not so concerned about his greatness. Okay, thank you very much. Hi, Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajanandana Jasodanandana Brajanandana Jamana Sira Vanachadi Jamana Sira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Vishnu. This is our public Sunday program here in Naperville. Noticing people that haven't been attending, please attend, because the plan is to have something for newer people this evening, of course, everybody, specifically relevant to and understandable by newer people. I don't know who's online here, but here we go. During this time that I've been spending in Naperville, we've been discussing one chapter from 10th Canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 14, Brahma's Prayers, and a little background for those of you that may need an introduction. According to our Srimad Bhagavatam and ancient Vedic scriptures, time is one of the very essential elements in all transcendental subject matter. We'll even go back a little bit further and just say, according to Baladev Vidyabhusan's commentary on Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada emphasizes this. There are 5 topics in Bhagavad Gita, and one of those 5 is time. And there's not a lot spoken about time in Bhagavad Gita, but there's a lot spoken about time in Srimad Bhagavatam. The other 4 topics of Bhagavad Gita, very, very simple. Material nature, Prakriti, material nature, God, Ishvara, the living entity, Jiva, and activity, or karma. But time, according to the Vedic picture of what is time, it's a Shakti or potency that turns the world, it turns the Kala Chakra, it turns everything in the whole of material creation. Time as we know it is absent in the spiritual realm because their activities are eternal, but here everything is temporary. So time moves matter. And one of the cycles of time, according to the Vedic picture of time, time moves in cycles. There's, like right now, it's night. So day and night is a cycle. And sometimes the day is longer, and sometimes the night is longer or shorter, but the cycle continues. Time kind of expands this way, that way. So there's small cycles of time, and there's medium cycles of time, and there's really big cycles of time. One of those really big cycles of time is creation and annihilation, and then a resting period of equal duration, and then it's time for creation again. And cyclically, time moves everything. The seasons move, everything moves by the force of time. And when it's time for creation, one of the essential servitors of the Supreme Lord, who serves the Supreme Lord and serves his time energy, is Brahma. He's the firstborn of the living entities that appear within each universe. By saying each universe, it means Vedic picture tells us there are many, 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 many universes, not just the one that we're in right now. Many, many, many universes. And universes, when they appear, they're hollow inside. And they're filled with darkness. There's no light. But Garbhodakshaya Vishnu enters in each universe, fills up half of the universe with water from his body, like perspiration, Garbhodak ocean, and the other half of the universe is where the planets go. To create the planets, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who's lying on that ocean within this universe, generates from his body, specifically even from his navel, a bud. We just read it this morning. It represents, or it is, the sum total of the karma, or the fruit of activity tendencies of the living entities that were in deep sleep during cosmic annihilation. When that karma awakens by the influence of time, this lotus appears. Brahma appears as the firstborn living being on top of that lotus. He engages in austerity of meditation upon his mantra for 1,000 celestial years. That's a long time. And at the end of that, he receives teachings from Krishna, and he then begins the process of creating the universe, or building the universe inside that upper portion of the universe. And he also moves with cycles of time. He has his days and nights. And during each day of Brahma, which has a long duration, 4,320,000,000 years is one day. It's our solar years. That's one day of Brahma. We're just introducing to who is Brahma. He enters into this universe that he created, specifically the earthly realm, where Krishna is performing his pastimes once in the day of Brahma, and he goes to pay his respects to Krishna. So he descends from the uppermost portion of this universe into the middle region of this universe to pay his respects to Krishna. And when he reaches Vrindavan, he sees something that's very amazing. He sees the pastime of Krishna where he's with his cowherd boys. At this time, Krishna is just 5 years old. And they're taking care of calves in the forest of Vrindavan. And suddenly, by the arrangement of Krishna's internal potency, there's a humongous serpent demon named Aghasura. In Sanskrit, Agha means sin. He's a very sinful personality. And very much afraid of him, the demigods are in the sky and they watch what Krishna does, as does Brahma. And Krishna takes away the life of Aghasura and gives him liberation. Everyone in the sky seeing, the cowherd boys, everybody sees it. The soul of Aghasura leaves his body, hovers in the sky for a few moments. Krishna leaves the serpent's body. The soul merges into the body of Krishna. He gives him liberation. And that's just about midday when this happens. So the cowherd boys are really hungry. They go and have lunch. And while they're having lunch, Brahma gets a really bad idea. Well, he's curious, that's not bad. He's curious, what's the limit of Krishna's mystic power? The bad part is, he wants to challenge his mystic power against Krishna's mystic power and see what Krishna will do. That was a bad move. Defensive. So what he did was, with his mystic power, he stole away the calves and then the cowherd boys to see what Krishna would do. So what Krishna did was, he manifested identical forms of each cowherd boy, identical forms of each cowherd boy and each calf. And when Brahma saw that there were the calves and the cowherd boys, he went back to the cave to see, are they still in the cave? And they were still in the cave. Then went back to where they were having lunch, and they're having lunch. So he was bewildered. But even more bewildered was when Krishna showed for each of the cowherd boys and calves forms of Narayana, personality of Godhead, with the symbols of Vishnu in his hand, and decked with all the ornaments of Lord Vishnu, surrounded each one of them by the so many potencies. How many potencies does the Supreme Lord have? Unlimited. Personified forms of those potencies for each and every one of the forms of Narayana. Brahma was astonished. But it didn't end there. Krishna then showed universes. Many. I mean, we can't see one universe, but he saw many universes. And then, if that wasn't enough, then they all just poof, disappeared and entered into the body of Krishna, because Krishna is the source of everything. So he got direct realization. Previously he had heard and received knowledge within his heart. Now he saw it but with direct experience. This original form of Krishna is called in the Bhagavatam Swayam Bhagavan Krishna. Swayam Bhagavan Krishna is the original form from which all other forms emanate or expand. Not only all other forms, all other potencies, everything. Everything has a source. Now probably our young people in 8th grade science learn about Big Bang cosmology. Have you studied Big Bang cosmology in school?
I think they removed that from the curriculum.
You will next year. Yeah. So in Big Bang cosmology, it's very interesting what they have to say. You know, it probably has undergone some iterations since I heard it being spoken. But it goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a singularity. What's a singularity? It's unlimited mass compressed into a dimensionless point. So once upon a time, there was a singularity. And at a certain point in time, there wasn't any cause, it just exploded. Kaboom! Big Bang. And mass went flying in all directions. This unlimited mass that was compressed into a singularity goes kaboom. You go flying around space. Don't ask where the singularity came from. Don't ask where the matter within the singularity came from. Don't ask where the sky that the singularity was within came from. Just kaboom. And then Big Bang. And then there's hot matter flying all over the space place and it cools down. And now you get planets, depending upon, variables. So that's the beginning of the cosmology from some scientists, modern times. Vedic cosmology has a different picture. Those planets were built by Brahma with the matter that was given to him, provided to him by Lord Vishnu, and the intelligence and the blueprint. The blueprint was the universal form, and seeing the universal form, he knew how to build the universe, because he's very intelligent. So he begins offering prayers to Krishna after seeing what he saw, and the first few verses, I'm going to be spending time with verse number 3. So those of you that like to learn the verse, it's a really good verse to learn. 10.14.3, Srimad Bhagavatam. The initial part of Brahma's prayer goes like this. He's offering profuse apology for his audacity and foolishness. He's very specific. He's not just asking for forgiveness. He is acknowledging what specific wrong he has done. There's really 2 wrongs, but he tested his mystic power against Krishna's mystic power. He challenged Krishna. Show me your mystic power. Here's mine. That was offensive. And yet he says, although I offended you, instead of punishing me, you showed me your mercy. the mercy came in two ways. I had this curiosity, what's the limit of Krishna's mystic power, and now I know there's no limit to Krishna's mystic power. And the other is, not only you showed me that, the answer to my curiosity question, but you've shown me your original form. Because he had not yet seen his Krishna's original form. There's a description in Canto 2 where Brahma, before the universe is built, he sees the form of Lord Vishnu after his 1,000 years of meditation and austerity. Lord Vishnu appears before him, forearm form of Lord Vishnu. And from that forearm form of Lord Vishnu, he comes to know the ocean of truth, and that Krishna is the origin of the ocean of truth. He's the source of everything. Truth in the Vedic sense doesn't just mean the opposite of something that's false. That's one sense of meaning of the word truth. But the Vedic sense of the word truth is that from which everything else is resting, or from which everything else comes. That's the absolute truth, whatever that is. So he's now seeing that original form of Krishna. And then he also states, I wish to attain you. Now, attain Krishna means, let's go back to his position within the universe. Brahma's position, he's the topmost living being. He's the most intelligent living being. He's the grandsire or grandfather of all other beings, not only human beings, but all beings, all entities. He's the granddaddy. He's the source, energetic, creative personality of everything within the universe. And the position of his planet, or the place where he resides, is at the topmost position of the whole universe. Attaining Krishna means, which is what he's praying for, or requesting, it's his sankalpa, his aspiration. He wants to be like the residents of Vrindavan. They have attained Krishna. He wants to be with Krishna in the spiritual realm, which comes later in his prayers also. He specifically says like that. So if somebody goes way up the corporate ladder, the universal corporate ladder, and he's recognizing that's not really what the goal is. Really what the goal is to attain Krishna, his association in Vrindavan. He then states that although I'm seeing this form, I can't understand this form. He can understand so many things, but he can't fully understand the form that he's seeing before him. And he also says, what to speak of your form, the happiness that you're experiencing. And then comes this deceiving verse. So all that is background to share with you. 10:14:3. And those of you that like to recite verses can recite it with me. 10:14:3. Maybe you'll be able to remember it just by hearing me say it. Jnane prayastam udapasya namanta eva jivanti sanmukalitam bhavadiya artham Stane sitakshruti gatam tanuvan manobhir ye praya sojita jito yasi traistri lokyam. Even sounds nice, doesn't it? So we'll break down, I'll read the translation and we'll break down what the verse is saying. It's very important for all of us who wish to walk the path of bhakti or become spiritualized Krishna conscious persons, this is very instructive. Those who, this is the Prabhupada's translation, because it's Prabhupada's translation because it's also found in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge and with their body, words, and mind offer all respects to the descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations, which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees, certainly conquer your lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds.
Sankalpa is asked.
Very important verse, very celebrated verse, often cited verse. It's a good verse to memorize if you like to learn verses. If you just say it again and again, you'll learn it. It starts Jnane Prayasa. Prayasa means endeavoring. Prayasa. And Jnane means endeavoring for speculative knowledge. The previous verse he said, I can't understand your this form that you've shown me. Mercifully, you've shown me the original form from which everything comes. I don't understand it. Now he's saying, to understand it, you have to let go, or udapasya literally means to throw far away. Jnane prayasa udapasya, discard, give up, trying to understand the absolute truth, Krishna, by the speculative process, but instead, namanta eva. Eva means certainly. Namanta means offering respects. Namaste. Namanta. Giving up false ego and submitting oneself to Krishna. So those are two parts so far. Jnane prayasa udapasya, namanta eva. Then jivanti is a very important verse, a very important word. It has the same verbal root as jiva, jivanti, means you live. You dedicate your life, jivanti. Sun mukharitam. Sun mukharitam. Mukha means face. So the topics that are chanted by the mouths of your devotees, the glories of the personality of Godhead. Bhavadiya Vartan. Bhavadiya Vartan means topics in relation to you. Sanmukhat Mukharitam Bhavadiya Vartam. Reject the speculative method. Instead, offer your obeisances to, from your heart, those topics heard from your pure devotees that are about you. And jivanti, you live with that, or you abide, because remember, he wants to attain Krishna. So jivanti, you abide your life with those topics. You align your life and immerse your life with those topics. The next part, stane stita, means you stay in your position. Stane means to be situated in. And stita, you stay where you are. So, if you're, whatever your profession, whatever your psychophysical nature is, you may be this, you may be that, maybe the other thing. There's not a prior qualification or disqualification. Stay with whatever you are, whatever your nature is you just continue doing that. Sthane sita. You don't have to become a sannyasi. There are teachings out there somewhere in India that says you can't make any spiritual progress unless you become a sannyasi. But that's not what Krishna says. It's not what Brahma says. Words and mind to these topics. So stay in your position. If you're this or if you're that, if you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a street sweeper, you're an accountant, you're an agricultural person, you're whatever you are, you stay in your position, but universally, dedicate your life energy, so surround your activities resting upon this one thing, the topics of Krishna, as a core central part of your life. And never abandon it. Stay with it, and it will stay with you, and it will spiritualize your life. And then comes the last line. Yea, prayaso, here's this word, prayasa again. Those who endeavor in this way, all of the above, yea, prayaso, ajita jita. Ajita is the name of Krishna. That means he cannot be conquered. One who cannot be conquered is ajita. And then the very next word is jita. He who cannot be conquered becomes conquered. That sounds like a contradiction, right? He who cannot become conquered becomes conquered. That is, the supremely powerful Krishna, who Brahma is speaking to, there is no one that is equal in power to him. He has no equal and he has no one greater. There's a phrase in the Bhagavatam, Astama Urdhva. Sama means equal, he has no equal. And Urdhva means greater. He's the supremely powerful. That's God. There's the Almighty God. There's no one more powerful. But he can be conquered. And how is he conquered? He's conquered by Bhakti. Like the resident of Vrindavan, like Mother Yasoda, binding Krishna with a rope. We spent the whole month of Kartik praising Lord Damodar, the pastime of Yasoda Damodar, because the love of Mother Yasoda is so great, Ajita became Jita. She didn't bind Krishna with rope, exactly. She bound Krishna with her love because the rope was inadequate. But when Krishna saw the intensity of love that she had as mother for him, she agreed to be bound. He agreed to be bound. And then she bound him. She tied him up. That's the meaning, is one of the meanings of the name Damodar. Damo means waist, and Uddhara means around the waist. It was bound around the waist, Damodar. Not exactly by the rope of Mother Yasoda, but by the love of Mother Yasoda. So, ye prayaso ajita jita. Pyasdi Taishri Lokyam. He's unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds, Trilokyam. So the three worlds, the lower, middle, upper planetary systems. Brahma is from the topmost of the upper planetary systems. But he can't find Krishna. He can't control Krishna. But love can control Krishna. So the all-powerful Supreme is controlled by the love of his devotees. But it's not like the devotees are thinking, wow, that's great, rubbing their hands together saying, I want to control Krishna. I'm going to love him a lot so I can control Krishna. That's not what love is. But when it's genuine love, then it's just as we are controlled. There's law. We may be governed by law, keep to the right or something. The law that says do this and don't do that. So we oblige ourselves to the law of the state. But stronger than the law of the state is the binding force of love. Stronger than law and order is the power of love. It breaks all rules. And similar, so we have that tendency because it's within Krishna. And it's one of the secrets or glories of Srimad Bhagavatam's message is when we're speaking about the importance of the Bhakti process, as is Brahma speaking about the importance of the Bhakti process, when it becomes very, very mature, very well developed, Krishna likes so much. He likes so much the affection of his devotee towards him that he becomes controlled by that affection. And that's one of Krishna's greatest qualities. The Sanskrit phrase is Bhakta Vatsala. Bhakta Vatsala. I'm going to tell a little story and then end. The little story is something that many of our listeners already know, but there may be some of you who are newer and you don't know. It's an example of Krishna's quality of Bhakta Vatsala, where he's controlled by the love of his devotee. And the story, there's a longer version, the shorter version, is grandfather Bhishma, when he was born and as a young man, he had a different name. Does anyone know what his different name was? Devarata. But when he took this vow for the sake of his father that he would not marry and he would not become king, a sound came from the sky, Bhishma, great vow, for the sacrifice of his dear father. So his nature was, Bhishma's nature was, he would never break his vow. He would never break his vow. He even had to contend with Parshuram and do battle with Parshuram for a whole month. Each day, battling Parshuram. I wouldn't want to do that. Because he wouldn't give up his vow, that he wouldn't marry. So his nature, he was renowned for not breaking his vow, but Krishna made him break his vow. You know how that happened? Krishna made him break his vow. Krishna made Bhishma break his vow this way. In Mahabharata, some days into the battle, Duryodhana was complaining to grandfather Bhishma, "You're my commander-in-chief, and you are so powerful that you can defeat anybody, but you're not really trying because you have affection for the Pandavas. I know that. but you're the commander-in-chief, you're duty-bound, and you're not performing your duty. So Bhishma said, all right, I'll take a vow. Here's 5 very special arrows. Tomorrow morning, with these 5 very special arrows, I'll slay the 5 Pandavas. Duryodhana was, yay, slay the Pandavas. It's over. But he was a little tricky. He said, can you give me those 5 arrows and I'll bring them to you in the morning? You know, he's clever king. So Krishna is cleverer than the clever king Duryodhana. Krishna, being omniscient, he knew that grandfather Bhishma took this vow, and that Duryodhana, had the 5 arrows. So Krishna went to Arjuna. It still wasn't too late at night. He said, Arjuna, you remember long, long ago, you saved Duryodhana's life. There was a big, big battle with one Gandharva, and you saved his life, Arjuna. And Duryodhana was so grateful, he said, whatever, you saved my life, whatever it is that you want, I promise you, it's yours. Remember that, Arjuna? So now's the time to ask. You didn't ask for anything then. Now's the time to ask. Go ask him for the 5 arrows. You'll know what you're talking about. So Arjuna just did whatever Krishna said. He went to Duryodhana and asked for the 5 arrows. So Duryodhana gave the 5 arrows because he kept his word. And when Duryodhana went to see grandfather Bhishma, and that morning, before the battle began, Duryodhana said, you know what happened last night? Arjuna came and asked me for those 5 arrows. So I don't have them anymore. And Bhishma was also very intelligent. He said, I understand. Arjuna did what Krishna wanted. So Krishna made me, who never breaks my vow, to break my vow. I'm going to make Krishna break his vow. Because he's Bhaktavatsala. He'll protect his devotee Arjuna. I know that. So I'm going to take a vow. Before the sun sets tonight, either Krishna breaks his vow or I'm going to kill Arjuna. So what happened? Krishna broke his vow. Because he's Bhaktavatsala. More important thing to Krishna than keeping his word that I will not fight in the battle, because he had taken that vow, was protecting his devotee. For Krishna, there's nothing more important than that, is his dear devotee. And because of the love of his dear devotee, that love of the devotee controls Krishna. That's one of his most outstanding qualities. Bhava Grahi Janardana, or Bhakta Vatala. He who is controlled by the love of his devotees. And he loves his devotees because his devotees love him. So that's the teaching of the Bhagavatam. It's not that, the goal of the Bhagavatam is to control Krishna. The goal of the Bhagavatam is to love Krishna. And how to love Krishna, let's go through it again. That the main spotlight goes on dedication, focused dedication to the topics of Krishna. Whatever you do, stay in your position, whether you're a student, whether you're a teacher, whether you're an engineer, whether you're anything. Do your thing and dedicate yourself, commit yourself, live with full dedication to the topics of Krishna that are heard from Krishna or his devotees. And you make your dedication with your body, with your words, and with your mind. Throwing far away speculative process, rather namanta eva, simply with folded palms, wishing to be in service to Krishna in these ways. And the result, Bhakti awakens. And when Bhakti awakens, Krishna becomes attracted by that Bhakti, so much so that he becomes controlled. Of course, Mother Yasoda her love was not, let me control Krishna. That wasn't her mood. But her mood was, as mother, as mothers will be with a child, show motherly affection. And that motherly affection is so strong that Krishna becomes controlled by it. So that's our discussion for our Sunday program. And I hope there's some new people attending, because it was designed for newer people. And it is kind of a nice point that we have been speaking about during this whole visit in Naperville, for those that have been regularly attending the classes. So let's see if there's some discussion. And particularly interested in the newer people that may not be regularly attending these classes. We invite you to send in a question to the chat box, and we'll maybe just get things rolling, start with the devotees in the room here. Who would like to raise a question?
Maharaj, my question is, can you hear me?
We're good.
So my question is, what is the difference? When is it pastime and when is it karma? So an example of this is when Mother Kunti lets go of Karna. Was that pastime or was that karma?
The event with Karna,
Mm-hmm.
it's not karma. Bhishma Dev speaks to Karna just before passing. And Bhishma says that your nature was wicked from the very beginning of your birth, because your birth was not conceived in an auspicious manner. At that time, Kunti was a young lady, not married. And the sun god was called by that mantra, and it wasn't irreligious, but it wasn't auspicious. So Bhishma Dev says, because you were conceived in that way from the very beginning, you are wicked. Powerful, but wicked. And and thus misfortune came to you. So it's more of a pastime than Karna's karma, past fruitive activities. I have no information of who Karna might have been before he was born as Karna. Maybe there's some carryover from his previous life somewhere that may be explained, I don't know.
So was it
It's a pastime to instruct us in many ways. It was fortunate and misfortunate at the same time. Being the sun god, he had celestial powers, but they were misdirected celestial powers. So therefore he aligned himself with the bad person. He knew Duryodhana was bad. Not like he didn't know. But Duryodhana showed him affection. Duryodhana placed him on the same throne with himself, side by side. They were like best of buddies. And he was proud, and he was feeling mistreated, and Duryodhana treated him with affection. So he aligned himself with Duryodhana. During this conversation, Bhishma was asking Duryodhana, these are your brothers, not just cousins. They're your brothers. And Kunti is your mother. So don't go against your mother and your brother.
side with them, leave the side. So he couldn't, he said, I can't leave Duryodhana. What you say is true, but I can't. So he was stuck, implicated with his misfortune, a bad association with Duryodhana. He was implicated. So that's part of the lesson. Don't implicate yourself with bad association, because then you may do things that you know really shouldn't be doing. And you're too attached, it's too late, you're too attached. So Karna accepted that I'll be killed because the Pandavas are favored by Krishna. So, but I'll go out with a good fight. The sun god. It's instructive. All these personalities are doing what they're doing because it facilitates instruction from Krishna to the world. Anything else over here? Yes?
Maharaj,
Here's the microphone. When you speak, it might be best if you pull the mask down so then we can hear you better, online especially.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, Brahmaji is the most intelligent person.
Yes.
And he is also a great devotee.
Yes.
He himself says that he could not understand the Lord.
Yes.
So, as a Jiva, I mean a tiny, insignificant soul like me, when particularly reversals happens in our life, so how do we at that time, you do space for anything.
When you're speaking now of misfortune?
Yes.
Well, that's text 8. Go ahead and read text 8, but go ahead.
So reversals.
Yes.
Especially in the reverse.
Yes.
So, how we can get over, you say that, yes, performing devotional service will help, but you can't really lose the taste for anything, both material and spiritual.
The losing taste has to do with attachment for the temporary, and the solution to the attachment for the temporary is attachment to the eternal. Bhakti requires attachment to the eternal, and when attachment for the eternal becomes real, then attachment for the temporary slackens. Your statement is, my attachment to the temporary is interfering with my attachment for the eternal. I've lost the taste for the attachment to the eternal due to my attachment to the temporary. Yes?
So why the Lord puts the devotees even though into that situation? He's trying, but...
I'm trying to be a nice devotee, but Krishna's not making it easy for me. He's making it hard because there's this difficulty that's facing me. And my attention goes to the difficulty instead of to Krishna. So why is Krishna doing that? That's your question.
Yeah. And that you say karma, but at least...
No. For the... read... I invite you, please. Read Brahma Samhita, text 61. Verse and purport. I'll recite it. Yastvindra gopam atavindra mahosva karma bandhanurupam pavabhajanam atunoti. This is karmani nirdhita kintu cha bhakti bhajam govindamadi purusham. So, Govinda is very kind. For those all the way up the heavenly region, all the way down to the little germ, the Indra Loka germ, they get their karma. But, for those who are Bhakti Bhaja, those who are devotees, there's a different rule. And the different rule is, Krishna interacts with those devotees in such a way, he takes away the very root cause of their material existence. Namely, trying to be the enjoyer of fruitive activities and nescience. One is passion, the other is ignorance. The root cause of suffering is ignorance. So Krishna, for the devotee, is very kind. He helps remove that ignorance. However, in the removal of ignorance, sometimes we say, ouch, it hurts, because we're attached to it. We're attached to fruitive activities, deeply ingrained is fruitive activities and nescience, forgetfulness of who we are, and adopting another identity instead of who we are. That's nescience. Nescience. It covers real good knowledge and the real happiness of a living entity. So that verse in Brahma Samhita says, Govinda is very kind. For the devotee, there's not karma involved. It's Krishna's helping that devotee become forever finished with nescience and fruitive activities. Instead, acceptance of him. So where does one's attachment go? That's the question. If there's attachment to being the enjoyer of the temporary, that's nescience and fruitive activity. Krishna's not a cookie cutter personality. He doesn't do the same thing with everybody. But the principle is, he may create a situation of prosperity, things are going very well. Then again, he may take that situation of prosperity, like he did with Prabhupada, he took it all away. Correct? And what was Prabhupada left with? Krishna. And then he became more wealthy than he would have been if his business didn't go down. He had Krishna. And once he had Krishna's unalloyed shelter, Krishna gave him more than he had when he was a householder. But when he came to, when he started, when he was living in India even, he had next to nothing. He was mendicant. He wasn't unhappy, but he had next to nothing. The rooms that he stayed in at the Radha Damodar temple, they were arranged by Vishnu Goswami, who at that time was the mayor of Vrindavan town, and the main priest at the Radha Brahman temple. He had a relationship with the Goswami at the Radha Damodar temple, and he made an arrangement for a room for Prabhupada to stay. And it was next to nothing, because Prabhupada had next to nothing. Anyway, you get the idea. He was left with next to nothing for a long time. Next to nothing for a long time. And then by that purification of continuing to serve, although he had next to nothing, he wasn't whining and complaining, I had next to nothing. He was wanting to serve. And then Krishna gave him all kinds of things. But he didn't become proud of those many things, or infatuated with being the enjoyer of those, because that was all gone. Like Krishna's kindness of taking everything away. That's the meaning of Hari. So it doesn't have to look like this or like that. It can be whatever it is. But it's the kindness of Govinda as he takes away from the very root the cause of our material existence from his sincere devotee. There's this nice prayer, you probably know it, written by Rupa Goswami, who says in his prayer, if you at all want to be happy in family life, don't go to Keshigat. Because there's this young boy playing upon a flute at Keshigat, and you'll lose all of your attraction for family life. So don't go there. They'll steal your heart away. Which is, a negative way of saying go there. Not specifically so that you'll lose attraction for family life, but the affinity for being the enjoyer of temporary. The position of devotee is not to be the enjoyer of temporary. The position of the devotee is to engage in service in whatever situation Krishna arranges. And we just accept the arrangement that Krishna makes for us, and we move toward Krishna with that arrangement. Recognizing all the while he's very kind. Not the opposite. Why is he doing this to me? Because I'm trying to be a nice devotee. That's, I want to be the enjoyer. That's not what Bhakti is. So that I want to be the enjoyer is that part of the problem. That is the problem. Krishna is the enjoyer. And when that consciousness is aligned in our life, it's different. Life unfolds differently. We're going to do some online questions. Yeah? We'll come back. You have something I mentioned, right?
I have a lot of questions.
A lot of questions, okay. So look, scan if you see any new, you read the first one, but if you see any new people, take those questions first.
Taruni Radhamata's question. How can I ensure that when I hear, I'm not doing so to just gain knowledge like a jnani, but I'm hearing with the right attitude of a devotee? What are some steps to take, and can you elaborate how to make sure?
Well, the very nature of your question indicates two things. That there is a tendency to gather knowledge for the sake of knowledge. And you're also indicating that you understand there's something better than that, and that's the beginning. So listen with practice listening with the disposition or the orientation that this is going to purify my existence. It will attract me to Krishna, and my love for Krishna will grow just by that sound vibration touching my heart. You go forward with that disposition, and it will diminish the attractiveness of knowledge gathering propensity. We want to know about, so it's the main consideration here is your intention. We as devotees, we want to know Krishna. So that's an inquisitive spirit. It may take on the position of jnana, or may take on the position of bhakti. So the disposition of heart is everything. So you practice that disposition of heart and it will go. It's far more attractive than the Gyan spirit. That's my simple answer to that question.
There are two questions from Sarala Padi Mataji from DC area. First question, how can one increase bhakti towards Lord Krishna? Is it possible through practicing Krishna consciousness? Is it possible to quantify how much bhakti one can have towards Lord Krishna?
Thank you for that question, because it's exactly what the topic of this evening's verse was. 10:14:3 answers your question. Now, it's dedication, one more time, to body, words, and mind, to the topics of Krishna. While you stay in a position, you do your prescribed duties, do them nicely, responsibly, and dedicate. And is there a way to quantify? That's the other question. Measure or quantify?
Is it possible to quantify how much bhakti one can have?
Yeah, you hook yourself up to a bhakti meter. You read the gauge. It's your thoughts stay with Krishna even when there's distress. That's a real good barometer. And when there's great fortune, your mind goes to Krishna also, rather than to being the enjoyer of the good fortune. Your mind stays with Krishna. That's the test.
The second question is, why Lord Krishna always is in favor of Pandavas as opposed to Kauravas? Is it because of close relationship with Arjuna? Is there any situation where Krishna supports Kauravas?
It's because of their bhakti, and the Kauravas are the opposite, abhaktas.
We have two questions from Sri Radhika Mataji. You mentioned that previously Brahma had heard about Krishna's glories, but from the Brahma Vimohan Leela, he got direct experience of the greatness of Krishna.
Yes.
I can see a parallel here with the concept of the three kinds of evidence for gathering knowledge, Pratyaksha, Anuman and Shabda, as well as with the four levels of intelligence, those that learn by hearing from the experience of others, down to those who learn by what you call the school of hard knocks. So I have two questions. First question. It seems that our psychophysical nature predisposes us towards a particular learning style, such as some are visual learners while some are kinesthetic, and others are oral. Does purity organically incline one towards Shabda Praman, or could it be that even in a pure state, a soul could have perceptual preference due to being a kinesthetic learner?
Yes.
Second question. It seems sometimes that lessons learned by the school of hard knocks, like in this case with Lord Brahma, might be longer lasting. In the area of training children in Krishna consciousness, even though we understand that the highest level of intelligence is acquiring knowledge through hearing, how can the parent and teacher tread the delicate territory of giving space for the dependence conditioned tendency to want to discover knowledge for himself, so that he engages with the teachings, assimilates and internalizes them, so that he owns them?
Sorry, ma'am. We have one guest. Sorry, ma'am.
Okay.
Read again.
That's just the last part.
So while training in the area of training children in Krishna consciousness, even though we understand that the highest level of intelligence is acquiring knowledge through hearing, how can the parent or teacher give space for the dependent conditioned tendency to want to discover knowledge for himself so that he engages with the teachings and internalizes and owns them?
Well, I think you gave me a very nice example yourself, Shiro, about science. There's to be that which you can learn by hearing, and that which you can learn by experiencing. You gave examples of being out in nature and experiencing this and that and the other thing. That's experiential. But it makes the knowledge of what is heard more internalized. So I think you have an innate intuitive sense as a teacher and a mother to help your children and students understand things, not only through the hearing process. It's just it's not part of your question. I'd like to say something that's not specifically responsive to your question or your comment. And that is going back a little bit in time with our earlier classes. Many of the individuals, such as Narada, Uddhava, Akrura, Brahma, they had knowledge by hearing, but their experience of Vrindavan was beyond their expectation of what they had heard. So there's something to be said about directly experiencing the form of Krishna, directly experiencing the love that the residents of Vrindavan have for Krishna, which for us is available only through hearing. But if we hear from the right sources, then we can get a deeper understanding about Krishna Tattva than Brahma did, even just by seeing Krishna, because this goes back, to the start, one of the first questions. Even Brahma the most intelligent person, was unable to understand that form of Krishna. Now, exactly what that means that he didn't understand the form of Krishna, that could be a topic itself. But the fullness of the understanding of the form of Krishna, or the fullness of the understanding of what the Vedas speak about, comes from Pratyaksha Avagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartam Avayam. It has everything to do with the quality of bhakti, not just the hearing. Not just the hearing. I mean, for example, this is now responsive to Srimati's question. The celebrated story of the illiterate Brahmin in Sri Rangam that was reading Bhagavad Gita, although he was illiterate. He understood it without the hearing and the cognitive faculties going. He understood from his heart. So bhakti is the important ingredient to cultivate when you're being a teacher or being a student. And that takes bhakti to cultivate bhakti. It takes a bhakti teacher and teachings for us to cultivate bhakti.
This question is from Rajeshwari Pran Mataji. How do we know that someone has well-developed and mature bhakti?
Well, you can start with steadiness. And their disposition of heart doesn't change with circumstance. That they're not in the Ferris wheel. No, things are going very well. I'm high on the Ferris wheel, then down, 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 down. I'm very low on the Ferris wheel. So they're steady regardless of up and down. These characteristics are described in Bhagavad Gita. Equipoise in all circumstances of life. Sthita pragya, or sthita muni, those are terms you find in Bhagavad Gita. Those are symptoms of one who's fixed.
This question is from Atulya Mataji. You explained about Tane Pita words, indicating that we should stay in our position and serve Krishna. I have also heard from you recently that we make our lives busy, being successful, that we do not have time to study Srimad Bhagavatam. It seems to raise doubt in me. If one stays within one's position or one's profession, then every profession takes time away that could be potentially used for studying Srimad Bhagavatam. What is the correct understanding?
That's the correct understanding. Staying in your position doesn't mean you don't do anything but. It's you stay in your position, stane stata, shruti gatam tanavan manovir. So it's not either or, it's both. That is to say, yes, Atulya, you would have more time if you were a sannyasi. But you're not. You have 2 children, you have a husband, and not only that, you were feeling restless when you didn't have some kind of activity, occupation, something to engage yourself in. Isn't it? And so you're doing. There's nothing wrong with your doing, but you engage that propensity in such a way that you're taking the topics of Krishna and applying it in your professional or other than motherly and housewife kinds of role. You're dedicating yourself that way also in Krishna's service. Yena tena pakarnena mana krishnena veshaya. That's the essence. So when you're doing those other things, you're also thinking of Krishna. Somehow or another, you're dedicating those things to Krishna, in service to Krishna. That's the life of bhakti, and that's how Krishna is understood. Not only in the time you spend reading, but that you apply that which you're reading when you're doing your other stane stata things.
This question, there are 2 questions from Vishakha, a 6-year-old daughter. Can Krishna come to our home and eat butter?
He can do whatever he wants. But is your home inviting enough for Krishna to come to eat butter? Make it inviting and he may come.
And her second question is, why does Srimad Bhagavatam have a lot of stories in one book, whereas Bhagavad Gita does not have so many stories?
They're different. The Bhagavad Gita is one part of a much bigger literature called Mahabharata. There's lots and lots and lots of stories. I told one of them this evening. the story of the arrows, the 5 arrows that Vishnu gave to Duryodhana. But that's a story. Because Bhagavad Gita is just the philosophical portion. There are sections of the Bhagavatam. There's lots of philosophy. You probably wouldn't be so interested in that compared to the stories. Vishaka.
This question is from Radhika Priya Mataji from St. Louis. Is it because Karna was in bad association with Duryodhana that he had to die, even though he was the son of Kunti, the great devotee? Also, was it because of his previous karma?
Well, that was a question that was asked already. And we all have to die. And the way in which he had to die was he was given advice by Bhishma, which he couldn't follow. And he said during that conversation, I understand the result of my being unable to follow is I'll be killed. And he just resigned to it. So, yes, bad association. He was attached to that bad association because the bad association was flattering him and treating him in a way that he felt he deserved and wanted to be treated. So if you associate with bad people, just because they may treat you in a way that you feel is nice, your good character will be taken away. And that's what happened. So because of his ill disposition towards the Pandavas, his enmity towards the Pandavas, which was the enmity of Duryodhana towards the Pandavas, he had to give up his life that way. Okay. So now, our hostess.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. It's a follow-up question to what Prabhuji asked. It feels like I'm not talking about the material miseries or prosperity spiritually. When things are going nicely, you're hearing your sadhana like going and slowly progressing. And all of a sudden you see this whole change like calamity. Forget about what is happening in material level, but the calamity in the spiritual side is like that we are not able to get out of that, get up from that where we fall off. My question was, like, we see that if you want to progress in spiritual life, you need to balance, you need to hear, you need to do your chanting and all that stuff. While that was going on, if this happens, like, two things is, one is, we know that we need to take shelter and we need to have faith in Krishna, but the practical way it is getting very difficult to focus again or get back where we are. Like sometimes it like feels like, where am I going, kind of thing, it feels kind of left over or somewhere, trying to get up but still not finding a way to get up. Though everything was going on, sadhana, hearing, listening, and all those things were going on before that.
Is this a 2-part question?
Yeah.
That's the first of 2 parts? Or that's the one?
That's
the whole question.
And I have another second question.
Okay. In spiritual life, in material life, but likewise in spiritual life, there's hills and there's valleys. Like there was a question, how do you recognize when someone has made significant or substantial progress in bhakti? They're steady. And steady doesn't mean outside, it's inside. So inside can be sometimes we're in the down cycle, the valley. And, it's not just you, it's unsteady bhakti. Unsteady bhakti. I'll give two examples. These are Prabhupada disciples. One of them I know that you know, Radharani. Another one that you probably don't know is Rasigya. You've heard her name before? Rasigya became a devotee at the Brooklyn Temple. She and her husband, Loitaksha, before they became devotees, their profession, they were married, and their profession was they were actors in Manhattan. That was their profession. So they became devotees, and they became part of the Vaikuntha players, they call themselves. They put on dramas and so forth. And after some time, she and her husband moved to Texas. So her husband died of cancer or something. And I hadn't seen her in years because she was living in Texas somewhere. Austin, I think it was, she was living. And there was a japa retreat arranged in Ojai, California, kind of like a really posh area. It was a nice place. It was a Buddhist temple up on top of a mountain. You look out, you can see everything. The valley and then the ocean over there, and just like, really serene setting. So it was, when it was 64 round day, we had sharing the next morning, and she was crying. And she said, I've been looking forward to this for 6 months. Really anticipating, wow, I get to be together again with God brothers and God sisters, and such a nice place, and so forth and so on. And she said, from the first round, almost the whole way through, it was such just a horrible experience. My mind was flooded with all the bad things I ever did to people. They said this and did that, and there's so many things, and I had even forgotten, but they all came flooding into my mind. And it's like I got up and started walking around, and I left the sanctuary here, and it just wouldn't stop. And I was crying. And I just threw my hands up in the air, literally, emotionally and literally. Krishna, why are you doing this? I had such expectation. And then that sad emotion stayed for a while, and then she said, I just let go. And then all of a sudden, I felt the last 10 rounds, I was just floating in the sky. And I've never experienced that before. That kind of sense of connection with Krishna my whole life as a devotee. And, so it is, I forget exactly what her conclusion was, but she felt there was a lot of purification. And so she was celebrating how kind Krishna was to not give her what she wanted, but purification. And then once that purification, she just surrendered to Krishna instead of, I want. She felt Krishna's reciprocation. That's really what she wanted. Not just feeling good. She wanted Krishna's being in the arms of Krishna. And another is Radharani. And I'm thinking of a third one now too. Radharani, we were together in Gitanagri, 64 round day, going to Mangalarti the next morning. And I'm driving, he's in the passenger seat, and I asked, how did it go? In a really dark voice, he said, it was a desert. I said, what? He said, almost the entire day. It was so. And I didn't say it, I was thinking, you're Mr. Glutton. You're so juicy, and you and the holy name is juice. You say it dry. And then, he was quiet for a bit and said, but sometimes it's like that. And so I just had to stay with the name. And then, the whole experience shifted. And then here's a third one. It's a lady. In this case, it's Jagatarani, and Shatrugopal will send you the link to an interview on the topic of being. Well, we can't go to Vrindavan, how to be in the Vrindavan mood, because we can't go to India at all. We don't have international travel into India. And she spent with her husband, Burijan, many years in Vrindavan. I mean, she spent time doing other things, but she loved Vrindavan. Everyone knows Burijan and Jagatra love Vrindavan. And they have their Varsana retreats and the Govardhan retreats and this and that. So, in that interview, she says, the three most memorable times of all my experience in Vrindavan is when I broke my leg, and then something twisted her ankle, and then had malaria. And she said it wasn't that, the pain was wonderful. It was feeling helpless. In that mood of feeling helpless, I felt the soft arms of Vrindavan Dham sheltering me. It was such a comforting feeling. That is, she was surrendered. She was rendered helpless. That's not a nice feeling. But in that helpless condition, she felt sheltered and protected. That's the difference between, who's at the center, or what happiness is, and what's the standard of well-being. So, it's going to be different for each person, but the standard of Krishna's kindness is not things are going well. And that shows that Krishna's being kind, because things are going well. It can be the opposite. And that's part of Krishna's kindness. Not too much of it, please. And when it stays prolonged, it's like Krishna. Too much. But, I know some people who, I'll mention her name, Premacharandi's health has been such that it's been so difficult for her. And it's not one thing. It's another thing, and then another thing, and major surgeries, and this and that, and so many things. But, the shelter is very clear. It's not in physical things. No. You get the picture.
Yes,
so what to do when you're feeling what you described? Shelter is there, but it's not through the material shelter. So you just like that jnane prayasa udapasya. It's the same with happiness. That is the configuration. I feel I've got this nice balance of everything. Sometimes there's imbalance. And what do? It's not you point a finger at Krishna and say, why are you doing this to me? You go back to basics. Take from to whatever capacity Krishna's given you, given the circumstances. You go to the heart level and you take shelter of Krishna in ABC, as much as time and circumstance permits. That sense of connection in that situation, like Jagatarini, was the most memorable experience of all, and being in Vrindavan. I was really surprised. But it was, she's genuine, she's not a cosmetic person. So listen to her speaking. It doesn't, by speaking like this, it doesn't make, okay, now I feel good. That's not the purpose. It gives an understanding of what's going on, what to do, why and what to do. Next.
The next question was, we have this five, I keep on wondering on this, the five bhavas that we have, the Vatsalya and all, but like thinking Lord as son or friend, but why there is no bhava of like thinking Lord as a father? Like, yes, he is the father, we know it, Krishna. Krishna is our father, but it's not part of the bhavas. Like, and the follow-up question was like, is it, I feel more connected with thinking Lord as the father. I won't be able to connect with any other bhava than that one. So is it something wrong I'm doing?
No, there's nothing wrong with doing. Brahma sees him that way too. And mother. Father and mother. And then there's verses that say he's everything. So part of everything is he's father. That question you asked has crossed my mind more than once. The rasas are described in terms of one's regard for Krishna. So the regard for Krishna, where he's like father, is like master, because father is master, and I'm the servant. Like Pradyumna to Krishna, his son. He had that kind of affection. And whatever Krishna wanted, that's what he wanted. And if he wanted something other than what Krishna wanted, and he found out Krishna didn't want it, he would give it up. So that's, maybe that's the answer to your question. He was acting like father to Pradyumna, and he was being regarded like father by Pradyumna. And others that have that servant to master regard. It can be even specific father or just master in the servant. Like Prahlad towards Lord Vishnu. He didn't feel fear of his mightiness, but he just wanted to be, you're the master, I'm the servant, that's it. So how's that?
Yes.
Okay, we're done. Thank you very much, Prabhupada. We're done. Do you have anything you want to add? You're good.
that way.